Hello, this is Dr. Dermot Hudson in London. I'm the chairman of the Korean Friendship Association of the UK and also official delegate of the KFA for the UK, and also chairman of the British Group for the Study, the Juche idea, and president of the Association for the Study of Songham Politics of the UK. This is a video message that I'm sending to the seminar on Korean Reunification that is being organised by the Korean Friendship Association of the United States of America on July the 31st. Unfortunately, I'm not able to directly participate, so I'm sending this video message to you. Firstly, I would like to salute the work of the Korean Friendship Association of the USA, which is being carried out in the most difficult circumstances that you can imagine. KFAUSA is operating in the metropolis of international imperialism and the metropolis of US imperialism and chieftain of world reaction. And in your activities you obviously face the repression of the US state machine, such as the FBI. So we think you're doing a very grand job, and we salute your courage and fortitude. On to the subject of Korean reunification, which is a very big subject. As you all will know, August 15th, in about 2 weeks, will mark the 77th anniversary of Korea's liberation from Japanese imperialist colonial rule. Regrettably, it also marks the 77th anniversary of Korea's division by outside forces, chiefly the US imperialists. On August 15th, 1945, Korea was liberated at last from Japanese imperialist rule. 36 years of oppressive, barbaric rule by the fascist Japanese and the decadent samurai culture vanished in a twinkling. In the northern part of Korea, where the Korean People's Revolutionary Army, led by the great leader President Kim Il-sung, had liberated the country, people's committees, organs of popular rule, were established by the people. The old oppressive Japanese ruling machinery was destroyed. The Provisional People's Committee of North Korea, a new type of government, was established on February 8th, 1946. The Korean people elected Comrade Kim Il-sung, the unrivaled patriot and national hero, as chairman of the Provisional People's Committee of North Korea. Many vitally important democratic reforms were carried out soon after liberation. Within 7 months of liberation, the historic agrarian reform law, which eliminated feudal exploitation and oppression, was carried out rapidly. The people, or the farmers, became the masters of the land. Nationalisation of basic industries was carried out, and progressive legislation on workers' rights and sexual equality was enacted. The labour law, enacted in 1946, even gave workers and office workers free medical treatment on an insurance basis, some 2 years before the much vaunted NHS was created in Britain. In contrast to this rapid progress in the northern half of Korea, reaction reigned, in fact ran riot in South Korea. Tragically, Korea had been divided. A US colonel, in fact Dean Rusk, who was later US Secretary of State, had simply drawn a line with a ruler across a map of Korea at the 38th parallel. Thus, 5,000 years of history as a unified and single nation was destroyed almost instantly by the stroke of a pencil, and the destiny of small nations trifled with by big powers. The division of Korea is something artificial. There's no historical or geographical reason for Korea's division. The Korean nation is a homogeneous nation with a 5,000-year-long history. Moreover, Korea was not an aggressor nation in the Second World War like Germany and Japan, but actually a victim of Japanese colonialism. The US imperialists fixed the 38th parallel as the demarcation line and occupied South Korea under the so-called pretext of disarming the Japanese troops in the south of the 38 degrees north latitude. Of course, there was no reason for them to do this, because the US had actually landed in September 1945 in South Korea, 3 weeks after Korea had been liberated. The US reigned over South Korea as colonial rulers, throwing a grave obstacle in the path of building a new society by the South Korean people. When I first visited the DPRK in 1992, I went to the Korean Revolution Museum. There I saw a map of the anti-Japanese revolutionary armed struggle led by President Kim Il-sung. Some with us were surprised to see this struggle had been waged not only in North Korea but in South Korea as well. Units of the Korean People's Revolutionary Army had also been active in South Korea. Someone asked why there wasn't a unified Korean government set up, as there were progressive and revolutionary forces in the south as well. The guide replied, the US imperialists did terrible things. They divided Korea. And, I can hear those words she said still ringing in my ears. And I myself have witnessed the division of Korea when I've visited Panmunjom, which is, some people call it the truce village, because it was here that the Korean Armistice Agreement was signed on 27th of July 1953. And this is a place where imperialism and socialism confront each other by gunpoint, and it's also a place that is symbolic of Korea's division. And you can see the pain of division there, and also how artificial the division is. The US kept hold of South Korea through various fascist and dictatorial puppet regimes, starting with the Syngman Rhee puppet regime, which was followed by those of Park Chung-hee, Cheon Do-han, Roh Tae-woo, Kim Yong-sam, Lee Myung-bak, Park Geun-hye, and now Yoon Suk-yeol. Recently, respected Marshal Kim Jong-un addressed the celebrations of the victory of the Korean people in the Fatherland Liberation War on July 27th. He made a very important speech, very profound speech, and he had this to say about the South Korean puppet regime. The South Korean conservative regime, which took office this year, is resorting to the extremely atrocious confrontation policies towards their fellow countrymen and acts of worshipping big countries and selling the country. These policies and acts surpass those of any previous conservative regimes and are driving the situation on the Korean Peninsula to the brink of war. The new South Korean regime has designated our government and army as their arch-enemy and obsessed with useless fear that they must prepare themselves to confront their fellow countrymen, are raising the pitch of their malicious voices and resorting to all sorts of evil and inappropriate acts. They are brazen and faced enough to advocate peace based on strength and security based on strength, and have put up a bold front claiming they would not hesitate in launching a preemptive strike to neutralise the war deterrent of our state. End of quote. And that speech has been published on KCNA. We've published it and we've actually issued a statement in support of it. I would recommend everybody study the speech in depth. There's a lot of material in it. I was just quoting one small part of it that refers to the new South Korean regime. Progressive people who support peace and the reunification of Korea need to struggle more vigorously against the war moves of the US imperialists and South Korean puppets and expose their warmongering. For independent reunification, the US imperialists must withdraw from South Korea and the South Korean puppet regime overthrown. And in this connection, we strongly support the anti-imperialist National Democratic Front of South Korea, the true patriots and revolutionaries of South Korea. I'd also mention that we're going to picket the US Embassy in London next weekend to demand an end to the hostile policy of the US towards the DPRK. Lastly, I would also like to point out, as head of KFAUSA, that Britain is also propping up the South Korean fascist puppets. On the 30th of June 2022, the British government, including the Foreign and Commonwealth and Development Office and the Office of the Prime Minister, issued a very lengthy document titled UK Republic of Korea Bilateral Framework for Closer Cooperation, which is aimed at giving more British support to the South Korean puppet fascist regime and provoking the DPRK. A hidden agenda behind the document is to achieve regime change in People's Korea. Britain has always played a reactionary and imperialistic role in Korea. In the 1900s, Britain connived at Japan's colonial occupation of Korea. Later, Britain sent troops to fight against the Korean people in 1950 in the Fatherland Liberation War. Shamefully, British troops were used as cannon fodder and mercenaries for US imperialism and its destructive and barbaric war against the Korean people. After the Korean War, Britain gave huge amounts of aid from the taxes paid by British working people to South Korea, and the then state-owned motor company British Leyland assisted the motor industry in South Korea. The bilateral framework document refers to South Korea as being a free and open society, quote unquote. Nothing could be further from the truth. South Korea is a despotic, fascist regime which operates the national security law based on old Japanese colonial laws and prohibits sympathy for the DPRK or indeed communist or leftist activities. In the past, South Korea murdered the leaders of the Revolutionary Party for Reunification, the Strategic Liberation Party, and People's Revolutionary Party. South Korea still has political prisoners, including a number of long-term unconverted prisoners. South Korea is dominated by the jailballs, big monopoly capitalist corporations, and is a society in which there is a big gap between the rich and poor, as typified by the film Parasite. The document refers to the complete, verifiable and irreversible denuclearization of the DPRK, basically repeating a tired old mantra. Of course, lurking behind this is the hidden aim of overthrowing the socialist system in the DPRK and colonizing the northern half of Korea. Moreover, it is taking issue with the DPRK's legitimate right to self-defense and is a denial of the DPRK's sovereignty. There is reference to, quote, concern over the recent COVID-19 outbreak in the DPRK. However, the DPRK has overcome the COVID-19 outbreak by its own efforts, and COVID-19 has been virtually eliminated in People's Korea. However, in South Korea, there have been over 18 million cases and a death toll of over 24,000 people. Isn't the British government's concerns somewhat misplaced? Moreover, it is hypocritical for South Korea to speak about COVID-19 in the DPRK because COVID-19 was spread into the DPRK on balloons flown by so-called defectors in South Korea. The document also refers to human rights and the DPRK opening up to the so-called humanitarian aid of imperialism. This is yet another ploy, another stratagem to create regime change in the DPRK and overthrow the socialist system. The DPRK does not need any humanitarian aid from either South Korea or Britain or US imperialism. There is talk of upgrading the existing free trade agreement between Britain and South Korea. This will only result in more cheap, substandard and shoddy South Korean goods being dumped in Britain. It will mean some British monopoly capitalist firms exploiting cheap labour in South Korea. KFAUK rejects totally the so-called UK Republic of Korea bilateral framework cooperation for ASSPUK cooperation. It is both a mechanism for denying the sovereignty of the DPRK and overthrowing the socialist system of the DPRK, and at the same time propping up the totally reactionary, fascistic and decadent colonial regime in South Korea. KFA UK believes that Britain should break with the old and discredited policies towards the Korean Peninsula and instead promote cooperation based on genuine friendship, mutual benefit and independence with the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, the truly authentic and independent state on the Korean Peninsula. KFA UK will play its part in opposing the war moves of the South Korean puppets and US imperialists and will join with KFA USA in the struggle to support People's Korea and the struggle for independent reunification. Long live People's Korea, long live the Juche idea, long live the Korean Friendship Association of the USA. Thank you for listening.